This is the Technology Whisperers with Alistair Ross, and today, very special guest, we have JB Benjamin, all the way from the United Kingdom, London area to be precise. Now, I'm going to read out a bit of a profile. The JB's boasts a bit of a profile here. I've got onto his LinkedIn. I've done a bit of digging, a bit of nosiness, and I got to say, I'm quite impressed. So let's have a look at this profile. It says. JB posts a prolific portfolio, highlighted by his pioneering work in creating the world's inaugural. He's wincing. He's like this. Oh my goodness! But it's on there for everyone to read. JB, so that's it. That's it. We're gonna read this.
I know it's worse when somebody reads it to
Yes.
you. I mean, there's nothing quite as cringeworthy.
Anyway, I will continue. I shall continue, right? And then you can swap this all later, right? So JB's highlighted by his pioneering work in the world's inaugural post-quantum encrypted messenger, Vox Messenger, and the unprecedented group transaction crypto wallet, Vox Crypto. And with each creation, he bridges the gap between possibility and reality, emphasizing solutions that tackle pressing global challenges. So I think we could go on, we could read the whole thing, but I won't embarrass you anymore, okay? JB, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming along. How are you?
I am fine, thanks. It's great to be
Just fine. Just fine. You're a bit mortified after that, are you? You shouldn't be.
Hugely embarrassed, but being
Not at all.
English will just, stiffer upper lip it and all that.
I think it's very important to shout about from the roofs about your accolades, and it really is impressive. Check out JB's LinkedIn profile for more information. Certainly, I read it off and I went, oh my goodness, there's a heck of a lot of awesome things, and I don't want to unpack all of them right in the first 5 seconds because I think over the next 45 minutes or so we'll really cover a lot of that. But first, JB, let's hear a little bit about you for a couple of minutes and just tell us how we got to the man that has created what is a post-quantum. And I think that's a really important thing that you're going to, in the world of technology, we're going to be hearing a lot more about in the coming months, but years definitely. And it's a really important area of technology that not a lot of people are talking about right now, but certainly we on the Technology Whisperers, we talked about quantum in a previous episode, one of the seasons before this season, and certainly, but it's certainly something that needs to be brought to the fore because it's going to change everything in technology and probably a lot of things in our lives. But tell us a bit about JB, how you got from the guy who you remember being a kid and growing up in the 1980s in England to creating post-quantum technology messenger applications and crypto apps. So over to you.
Thank you. Well, okay, the early years. So basically, as you said, very pointed out very succinctly, I'm a child of the 80s. In fact, I am one of the last batch of Gen X because I was born awkwardly just 5 days before Christmas in 1980, basically. So I'm like the last batch. Ooh. Grew up in a council estate in Birmingham in the 1980s. That's always fun. And I was largely homeschooled and privately educated by a kind of overbearing Bristolian mother. So for those of you listeners who know anything about English culture and know what the Bristolians are like, they're going to go, oh my God. Yes, but the one advantage to it was that despite having an incredibly strict upbringing where I had nothing but books, microscopes and science equipment, not toys for Christmas and birthdays, I learned a hell of a lot. The focus was mostly physics. I actually was trained to be a physicist, really, with a focus on quantum mechanics and wave theory. But as is always the case with an overbearing parent, I went completely the opposite direction and thought, I'm going to make films. That did not work out so great because in Britain, as your first film, you are not getting funding to make your usual suspects as your first movie. If you're going to be making your first movie, it's either a delightful rom-com with upper-class rich people in who are delightfully fuddled and all rather speak King's English like I do, don't you know?
Quite.
Yes. Or it's horrific stereotype reinforcing beat 'em up, shoot 'em up, ghetto black drama. I got no interest in that. I like old Chinese martial arts movies, the Shaw Brothers stuff, Bride with the White Hair, all that kind of stuff. I remember even later on in my life when I was holding my firstborn, Natasha, the way to get her to sleep was watching old martial arts movies. She'd just zone in. Sorry, as this generation call it, she'd lock in and really dig it. So yeah, spin the clock forward, go to university. I decide that if I can't make the films I want to make, by the way, just to put this perspective, if anybody's wondering whether or not it's a great loss to filmmaking, whether or not I made it or not, if I were going to compare myself to a director that's out there now, there's the director who actually kind of makes the vision that I would have had a reality is Zack Snyder. That guy's stuff is exactly how I would make films. Deep visual language and imagery, and not really caring what other people think about it, and just going ahead no matter what. Basically, just pleasing my artistic self. I decided,
It's the only way to be, in my opinion.
yes, hell yeah. And you
Hell
get a
yeah.
lot more done. I then went on to university, did my degrees in 3D animation and visualization, and I finished in 2010, and I did my dissertations all in adaptive artificial intelligence. And that's kind of where my second start of my life were to go, as it were. I've always since then been into adaptive and emergent technologies.
2011, it really truly was emerging, right? I mean, so what did the girls and boys at universities in 2011 say about you getting into AI?
Well, it was actually more of a case I got told by my professors that I was a nutcase and that designing systems that learn from being played on. So one of the things I pitched was basically the concept of an AI engine that learns from being killed in combat games and is able to recursively continually retrain itself on that to the point where it can self-embody itself into a new device. The stuff I was pitching was all about, AIs that had no central location, stuff like that. You could move from robotic existence to existence. And I was told I was a madman, and here we are, spin the clock forwards, and everybody's now talking about it and making millions off of it. Do I feel gutted that
Yeah,
nobody listened? Oh, hell yes. Um,
yeah,
does it irritate me nowadays? No, I got well past it now. I'm well over it. I'm
yeah.
44 now, so
It was like that time when I made this app that allowed people, and this was in, oh, I can't remember what year it was. It was like 1998 or something. I made this app with PHP 3, I want to say, and it allowed you to have your friends log in and update your status and do something like poke your friends and upload photos and stuff like that. And it all store it in a database for other people to log in and
sounds
see.
like
I
MSN
can't think of what happened there. I'm not better about it. Absolutely not.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, that stuff like that will continue to happen. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
While I was doing my degree, I was then met the mother of my children. I ended up starting having 4 children. Yes, I'm the father of 4 children who are practically adults, and one's kind of
Yeah.
between getting on now. Um,
No television in your house at that point in time, then.
no, you see, I tried to avoid that comment, but I got to be honest, I had no Xbox and I had no Sky TV. So sorry, kids. There you are. I would like to say that Vox Messenger was the product of an absolute choice to fix a problem in the space, but actually it wasn't. The reason I built Vox Messenger was to stop myself from going crazy or becoming an alcoholic or becoming one of these rampaging womanizers that seemingly happens to guys when they like come out of long-term relationships and lose access to their kids, or hanging off bridges going "fathers for justice" or any of that nutcase stuff. So I looked around and thought to myself, what is the biggest problem right now? Well, the problem I could already see back in 2017 was that everybody's data was being stolen. Now, as far back as 2015, I'd already worked out that the next emergent economy would be pure data. Because if you know anything about AI and you've been studying AI as far back as then, you realize that AI without data is pointless and useless. Therefore, data becomes the most valuable underlying component of anything. And that's what I started building towards. Vox Messenger is the world's first consumer available post quantum messenger. What does that mean?
Yes. What is that's a lot of words.
It's
So let's break
lovely.
that.
It's so sci-fi, isn't it? It sounds like Star
It
Trek.
sounds sci-fi, sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about. Obviously, it's a messenger app, so you can like we're all familiar with those. MSN Messenger, if you remember those days, as far back as that. And then we had Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and
Mhm.
all the things in between. So obviously, everybody's familiar with what the messenger principle is. So you've built a messenger, but it's this post quantum quantum bit that I think people are like, what the hell does that mean? So let's dive first of all, what's quantum, and what does post quantum mean? So let's have your definition there of quantum
Well,
computing.
first of all, you've got to look at what the current paradigm is. In terms of encryption, the current encrypted standard is elliptic curve, which is effectively the mathematical concept of finding 2 points on a line and a parametric curve. For those of us who know our history of cryptography, most of us will be aware that this was largely co-opted and backdoored way back in the 1990s under the original NIST competition. So that's always been a problem. And this is the underlying technology that everybody is using and hoping protects them in WhatsApp, in Signal, in Line, in WeChat, in everything that is used. Now, unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, technology has evolved, and we have a new type of computing called quantum supercomputers. And without going into the unicorn mathematics of how quantum supercomputers work, I'll just be very simple about it. Quantum supercomputers make modern computers, or our current equivalency of computing, look like a grandma sat backwards on a bicycle pedaling in a diagonal direction in a 400-mile-per-hour crosswind. It makes it look incompetent and silly. Quantum supercomputing is not just a small leap in calculation power, it is a giant freaking leap. We're talking like hundreds of years kind of concept leap. A quantum supercomputer can crack the elliptic curve standard in a matter of days to months as opposed to years and decades, which would be the current standard. Therefore, elliptic curve, completely pointless, completely useless in the incoming world. This is where post quantum comes in. The algorithms that will hopefully keep you safe after the advent of quantum supercomputers. By the way, just to give you a timeline, quantum supercomputers are already here. Google has 2 of them, NASA has 1, and God only knows how many other people have got their own. And NASA and JPL just announced a new combined record of 12 qubits. Now, to the layperson, that means nothing. But what it does mean to those of you who follow technology, it means we've just seen a giant technological leap forwards in computing that will allow the next generation of AIs to think faster and hopefully come up with fewer hallucinations. What does this mean for you, the consumer? It basically means that every single one of your passwords can theoretically be cracked in 5 minutes by any sniveling script kiddie who can rent some quantum supercomputer space, which, mind-blowingly enough, is already a possibility. Yes, that's right. You can go to IBM and actually rent some quantum supercomputer space. I wouldn't recommend it. It's pointless for most of us. It really is.
Is that a sort of single purpose, or it's not a general purpose quantum computer, or does it do lots of things now?
No,
Can
it
you
does
just
not. Quantum supercomputers at the moment do very, very few things. Let's put it this way: they don't work like a Windows machine yet. We're still kind of at the evolutionary stage of, for those of us who are going to wear our age on our sleeve, c'est moi, we remember something called command line. So many people, this will really get all the Gen Z going, what? Command line, where you actually had to type properly formed words and commands that you couldn't look up anywhere else except in a big old book like this thick. And you had to remember off your top of your head. And you would type these in. Now, quantum computing is currently still at that stage. It's at the MS-DOS 1 stage, where you can use it for high performance processing applications like predicting weather patterns, attempting to predict if groups of people, what will happen to people if you bring a helicopter in, things that require number crunching, behavioral analytics, or anything like that. You can rely on a quantum supercomputer for. They're even testing quantum supercomputing to process encryption for laser targeted messaging, which would be used for the communications between the next generation of satellites. All incredible stuff.
So is it fair to say then, like, when computers first started, like, I mean, going further back than MS-DOS, so I'm talking about, like, remember we had the Enigma machine, and then we had the code breaker at Bletchley, right? So we had the code breaker, and that computer there literally had a single purpose. All it could do was break codes, right? And even if it got different types of codes than the Enigma codes, it was like, That computer says no, right? So are we at that stage of the quantum computers, or are we a little bit more evolved than that? Where are we sitting on
We're
that?
more evolved than that. You know,
We're more evolved, right?
you could use a modern quantum supercomputer to not only calculate weather patterns accurately, but then you could use the same supercomputer to calculate genome. So there is not a case of it's an over specialization with a target on one niche component. They are
Hmm.
rapidly expanding their capability
Yeah.
across multiple areas.
So
Uh,
that's pretty scary, because the last time I like made an inquiry into the capability of it to do do take just do general sort of technology, it was very specialized. So it's incredible that we're advancing at that rate, and the fact that you said it's doing 12 qubits. I mean, I think that it was less than double figures the
yeah,
last time I
yeah,
looked.
yeah. And it's not, by the way, if you look at the time frame to this jump, it's not a small jump. If people are watching what's been happening in the modern world, they'll realize that Moore's law has basically been trashed and thrown out the window by most of the emergent technology, because we need to remember that the evolution of things like quantum supercomputing and AI are not linear, which Moore's law is based on. It's linear. It's scalar, which basically means its ability to expand, evolve is far beyond the ability for most people to actually conceptualize, unfortunately. But this is the kind. I'll give you a better example. Remember back in the 1930s, we had biplanes and barely had Mustang, turboprop planes. And then all of a sudden, the United States in the late 50s, early 60s comes out with the SR-71 Blackbird, a piece of technology that is so far, such a jump beyond the airborne vehicles of the Second World War. It does kind of bring some credence to potentially there being aliens and the Americans nicking their tech, because the technology, I mean, it's funny to think about. But if people, for those of your listeners who are like aviation enthusiasts, they'll know about the SR-71, and yeah, everybody says the same thing.
Is that
Scram
the radar deflecting thing that was
ramjet,
like,
ramjet,
yeah?
ramjet technology, which is only just now being properly deployed in hypersonic missiles. And this is in a vehicle that was designed in the from originally, I think design work started in the 40s and then built in the 60s. The order of magnitude of jump is not 100 years. It's actually almost more like a 500-year jump in terms of that technological progression conducted in a single decade. Now, if you look at
Wow.
the jumps that we have in AI and quantum supercomputing tech, they are far bigger jumps in smaller spaces of time. And this is also probably what makes it a little bit terrifying for especially baby boomers in the world, because we have they've never experienced a technological shift change like this. I mean, I myself, kid of the 80s, last of the Gen X, I've lived through three different versions of the three evolutions of the technological world. And I think we're the only generation who actually gets to experience all three versions of the technological
Mhm.
world. We have experienced the world pre-tech. We have experienced the world in the current nascent version, in the current variant of Web 2, and then post-tech, which is where we're going to now, which is the Web3 paradigm of blockchain and decentralized systems and artificial intelligence that unfortunately knows more about you than you do.
Yes, very scary indeed. So basically, you kind of did this just to keep yourself from going crazy, bringing up four children, which anybody who has even just one child can probably attest to. It's tough stuff, right? So basically, you do this. I totally understand that, but most people, when like you say, some people go off and do some silly things, but then there's other people who have, you know simpler hobbies. They go and play soccer or football, right? Whatever you call it. Right? They go off and they, go to the pub and they drink a few beers with friends. You, on the other hand, decide, you know what? I'm not going to make a messenger, because there's a few messenger apps out there already. I'm going to make one that I can't even access. You said to yourself, I can't even access quantum technology, because, when you started doing this, 2017?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was hardly a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was maybe one quantum computer in the world. I don't know. But you thought, you know what? This is going to happen soon, and I'm going to make an app which is so secure that even the quantum computers of not tomorrow maybe the day after or the day after that, in terms of computing terms, it's going to be secure to the point where nobody can read the messages going between people, and nobody can read the passwords as well.
Mm.
So that's basically what your thought was when you were bringing up 4Kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a nutter on our hands.
Funnily
No,
enough, a lot of people have said that to me. A lot of people have, what is it? Some people say to me, "Oh my God, JB, can't you just be normal? Just do normal stuff, man. Just have a normal life." And I'm like, "But what is normal? Seriously, what
Yeah,
is normal?"
exactly. When you have an inquisitive mind, it's wonderful to do that sort of stuff, and it's only jealousy that makes me sit here and say that you're a nutter. So that's fantastic. So you went through the messenger. Was that the first thing that you did, and then the other stuff came after?
No, I
How
mean,
was it?
actually, before I even built Vox Messenger, we're talking about the stuff that I've built that has been successful. Bear in mind, this has not been my first hit at play. Before I released Vox Messenger, I built another app called Whisper. And it's funny because Whisper was basically Treehouse or whatever that funky app was called. Before that was even a conception, but of course it went nowhere because it was a little bit too ahead of its time, and people were like, "What the hell is this?" So I basically focused on something that I thought would be a bit of an easier solve, because with
Mm,
Vox Messenger, it has we basically I don't base any of my businesses on needing money, ads revenue generation. That basically means I built a system it has no interfacing to ads in any shape or form. Therefore, it has no interest in your data, because that's the reason why people build the systems the way they do. They need data for ads analytics to get better at selling yourself. I'm sure your listeners will have experienced this. Those times where they're talking to friends and family on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or even Signal, and they'll mention a brand name. And then all of a sudden, when they come back out their messaging conversation, they see all across the internet, wherever they go, is ads specifically focused and targeting what they were talking about. And
yeah, it's pretty scary, isn't it?
yeah, and it kind of just sits. People don't really seem to notice. It just sits there at the back of their mind. Oh my God, I was just talking about that. Isn't that coincidental? No, MF, it is not coincidental. It's because they can actually read all of your data, and they love leafing through it. They love it because they can sell you more things. They can sell you more nonsense that you don't actually need, but all of a sudden you think that you need it. And
Hmm.
this is
Yeah.
where we get to the next reason why I build the stuff that I do. I understood very early on in studying AI and behavioral psychology that algorithms would become the single biggest controlling constraint in the technological world. Because with an algorithm, your listeners will have experienced this. You'll be using your phone and you'll be typing a message, and then autosuggest will find a better way of wording it for you. And you go, "Oh, that's really cool." And you give in to it.
Helpful.
Yeah, isn't that
Mm,
helpful? Think of it like
yeah.
this: with the right information, your auto suggest could be altered in a manner that could subtly create new thought patterns, new concepts, new ideologies, even just by subtly altering the actual suggestions put to you across all of your platforms, including your own auto suggested text. And it's so
Yeah.
subtle that people don't actually realize that this is actually a form of potential programming. So I kind of built my platforms around the concept of how do we protect free will, really? And to protect free will, you protect a person's data, but more importantly, you protect a person's digital sovereignty. Because we all know about sovereignty, right? The man in his castle, go defend your castle. Why don't we think that way when it comes to our digital existence?
It is a very good question, and I think that's one that we go, oh yeah, sovereignty, really good, and then we kind of just park it in the back of our heads, and it's something that we really need to start thinking about a lot more, because what's happening is this massive big snowball effect, and it's happening without our consent most of the time. It's happening against our free will, and to the point where in years to come, maybe a year or two, we're not talking a long time here, that this will happen to the point where there is absolutely no chance to roll back, because if we had Clippy right back in 1995, and that was amusing and annoying,
Everybody
right?
hates
Remember Clippy? Okay, so we had Clippy, and I was like, "Hey, do you want me to look at what you're writing and suggest some crap?" And that was all based on a very poor algorithm, and it was all local to your machine. And it didn't go off onto the internet. Fast forward to like when Grammarly came out, right? So Grammarly, you install that software, it would read what you're writing, and it would send some stuff up and down. There's a lot of telemetry up and down to the internet. It's always connected, but at least it stayed within the product.
Mm.
Now, Grammarly, that sounds cool. Grammarly is, and I'm not picking on you specifically, Grammarly, so don't kill me, don't send me lawsuits, blah, blah, blah. But what it's doing is now using AI and a whole bunch of LLMs and stuff like that to do whatever the heck it likes to do to now take your information and, just like you say, to basically model the right way of thinking or the right type of information that you should be seeing, and whether you kind of agree with it or not. And I guess if you're not classically trained like yourself, JB, then you could just go, oh, well, that's definitely the way to write because the computer tells me to do it. And so people are, especially with AI now, and I don't want to get too political about this, but we're letting go of the reins a lot more. We're not having to think as much for ourselves. And then when we start thinking about the sovereignty aspect of all of this on top of that, where is this all going? I mean, we had our castle, right? The computers behind me were completely compatible with that castle because everything that happened stayed on that computer. I don't want to go back to the 1980s and use these computers again, but there is something romantic about that. The fact that we had the complete control over the information that we have. If you say today, what control do we have over the information that we store on our computers? It's practically nothing. So talk to me a bit about your concerns for privacy and exploitation of our data. And obviously, your products obviously sound like they do help. But in the wider scheme of things, what can we do to protect ourselves, to protect our privacy, to protect our data from being exploited, and also to help with our sovereignty, whether that's keeping it on our own computers in our own house, whether that's keeping it inside our own country. What can we do? So there's three kind of points there: the privacy, the exploitation of our data, and our sovereignty as well. So sorry, a big loaded question there.
Well, privacy. I'm a firm believer that privacy is a human right. It's not a privilege. Now, for many of us, we'll have all grown up hearing the saying, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. For those of us who know our history, though, we'll also know that it was actually a Nazi that came up with that saying, and that saying was deployed to make people comfortable with snooping on each other and ratting on each other. We should always be very careful about the stuff we listen to and then use as an analog for a reason why not to do something. Now, the reason why we should have privacy is because at the end of the day, you don't have to be doing anything wrong to need privacy. Humans, just like normal animals, thrive in privacy. Who likes sitting, taking a dump with the door open and a bunch of people watching them? Nobody does. Well, maybe there's a fetish channel out there where somebody does. I don't
Oh,
know.
there's got to
Oh
be, right?
God, it does not surprise me. Seriously, anything can be monetized. But the biggest thing I would say is, I mean, there's all bunches of other reasons why you need to be worried about your data. You should have your data private and kept to yourself, because, not being funny, if people know enough information about you, they can literally interfere with your free will. They can literally interfere with your ability to think around a problem. And it gets even worse than that. They can directly politically advertise to you on every single channel that you're on.
Yeah.
There is no
I
respite.
mean,
Yeah.
we go back to just 2016, right? The Trump campaign, and whatever you think about, the people, politics, politicians, sorry, in that race. It's not really about that.
Nope.
What we know though is that people's data was interrogated, and that people were, people that were on the fence about which way to vote, or people who were thinking about voting for the opposition, they were fed information
Mm.
by certain individuals, and so all they would see was vote for Trump and so forth, and other things that would suggest a lifestyle that was for. So we know that actually happened. That's one case where we know it happened. But in reality, in the more subtle things in life, maybe not even politics, just little subtle things in advertising, that happens all the time, right?
It didn't actually just happen in that last election in the United States. It happened right here in the United Kingdom during the 2019 election, and it also happened during Brexit. Now, Brexit in Britain, I got to be honest, nobody really cared about the European Union. I mean, not to use swear words, but nobody gave a about the European Union in the United Kingdom. It literally was not on the first brain page of every single Briton at all. We didn't care. Britons liked going on holiday. Britons loved being able to go over the hell they wanted without having to go through checkouts and do their own thing. Britons loved not having to pay like mobile charges for roaming. Then a small political group, without pointing figures and getting all drenched in that nonsense, decided, how are we going to create a scenario that allows us to separate ourselves from the European Union, which has heavy data protection laws? Think of where this is going. You cannot be in the
Mm-hmm.
European space if you want to be able to do anything you want with people's data for AI. The United Kingdom government was already thinking about this during Brexit. We had to leave Europe because the future for Britain apparently is to become a AI training wonderland. The problem with that is in the European space under GDPR, it is illegal to take people's data without permission. Anyway, as I said, the reason why in the European space it's illegal to take people's data without their permission is for the very things we've discussed. It's to stop them being manipulated, to stop them being directly targeted. But there's also another component, which I think is perhaps even more egregious than the subtle, all-pervasive mind control and manipulation. It's the fact that your data is so valuable that for the average person, given how much of social media they consume and what they do online, they actually generate enough money, financial revenue for all of these companies that they themselves would not have to work. And yet they receive none of that. Instead, they receive mental health issues. That's it. Oh, and being manipulated. And that's what I try to change with my platforms. I mean, in terms of, I'd say everybody, all of your listeners are kind of got to get ready for day zero. Day zero being when they decide to move to platforms that guarantee in their terms and conditions and operation that they control their data, that they themselves, the individual, owns their data. There's no point thinking that you can go to Facebook, download your data from it, and put it onto one of these platforms, because the minute you uploaded it, they owned it. It states it in all of their terms and conditions. They own the pictures of your children. They own the funky messages you've sent to those people you've been having affairs and doing all crazy things with. They own everything. And if
Oh,
you really think
yeah, and I
about
think that these things are really important to point out because a lot of people could consider the people who are informed like yourself,
it,
JB, to be tin hat wearers. So it's important for us to bring back the reality of this. It's not just like saying of this future, this dystopian future, it might happen. The reality is it will happen through the information that is being stored right now.
it's already
This is
here.
happening right now.
Yeah, it's already happening right now. Think of all the people out there. I'll give you an example. Plenty of your listeners, if we were to probably look at your demographics, you'll probably find that most of your listeners fit within the middle class socioeconomic group. That being the so, we already know about the breakdown of the middle class across the whole world. Whatever, that's a discussion for a whole other show. It would be a very interesting discussion and very rambunctious, I'm sure. But anyway, uh, one of these, the problem, the thing is, all of your listeners need to realize, particularly in that group, that the value of their data is even more important to them, because they are having to do things like they're getting credit referenced, they're trying to get mortgages, they're trying to get remortgages, they're trying to buy cars, they're trying to and all of these things. Even your insurance policy is being graded on AI that knows stuff about you that you're largely unaware of. Like every
Mm.
insurance company now is buying the data of social media networks. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. I think the interesting thing that if we draw parallels to other countries which are a bit more controlling, so let's just look at China. So in China, we have a social scoring, a social ranking system. And this is not a joke. This
Oh,
is
no,
actually
yeah, but we have the same thing. It's called a credit score.
exactly, and I think that's the parallel that we're not drawing. Like
Mhm.
some people are not drawing here. So basically, there are cameras looking at your face, identifying who you are, knowing what you're doing, and then basically saying you're a good person or a bad person, and you have no say on this. And that is what they do in China. But then, just like you're saying, we have a credit scoring system. We have lots of systems, actually, some of them interconnected, some of them not connected. But whether you're in New Zealand or whether you're in the UK, there is we're in the Five Eyes, and we share profiles completely
Yeah.
among all the countries. So it's an international thing in what we call the Western society, and so it's a very scary thing, and we are only at its infancy. So it really. I mean, you could go on and on, right? And we could get incredibly political here, and I think
Let's be
we'll steer
hopeful.
away from that, but it is incredibly
I'll give
interesting.
people something hopeful. Okay, everybody's probably thinking, "Oh my God, JB, you must be terrified. 4 children going out into this,
Yes.
this."
Yes.
I'm not actually. I'm not terrified of what's coming. I'd probably say even though we have war happening and whatever, I would probably say I'm more hopeful now than I have ever before. Because why? Because despite Gen Z talking complete and utter brain rot 90% of the time, Gen Z have something that millennials and the baby boomers all missed, which is they have the ability to stand for something, and generally it's not something materialistic, which is a difference. This is one of the first generations that is not overly focused on materialism. In fact, this is the first generation that seems to be comfortable with the concept of not owning a damned thing, which is also slightly troubling because it means they would also be more okay with a lifestyle where everything is rented. Bear in mind, in the European Union, they've just decided to pass a bill which means that Europeans who have assets worth over 5,000 euros will be asked to list them on a national database.
Wow. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
So, what does this say for your ownership? Why must they have that information?
Mm,
For assets,
that's
easier, of
incredible.
course, because it's not because we're moving. Bear in mind, there's a reason why in the Western world everybody gobbled up the concept of Elon Musk and robo taxes.
So in terms of our fiat currency system, in terms of in fact, going as far as to say capitalism, and you did allude to a few things earlier on, but do you see that these things are on the cusp of basically just whether it's a decade, whether it's 100 years, these things are there is potential for it not to be around in the future.
Um,
What
Yeah,
would you?
this is the thing. I shake my magic 8 ball and I try to work out what's happening a hell of a lot. Hence why I was involved in AI before people were talking about AI, and I realized that post quantum would be necessary. Um, and this is the first time in my life where when I shake my magic 8 ball, I would honestly say all bets are off right now. There is no easy way of predicting what's going to happen next, I'm afraid.
Mm,
Which is a little bit scary, but at the same time, it's also really good because think of it like this. After if you look at the world history, after massive periods of unrest where there's been war and conflict, humanity does turn around and start to appreciate humanity more. Doesn't stay like that for long, but it does come back. But this time it will be different. This time, hopefully, most of us will have made the choice to take control of our digital souls. Because right now, what's being done to each and every one of us was the last time this kind of slavery was enacted, it was only enacted on one group of people. Now you're all slaves, all
mm,
working that field, all making money for a massa who does not give a damn about you. And
yeah.
somehow we're all going to have to wrest that control back.
Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of the reason I asked that question was to allude to the fact that you obviously did a messenger,
Mhm.
but you've also done a crypto. Is it fair to say a crypto wallet? What does your product do?
So basically, Vox Crypto is a crypto wallet that allows you to use, transact, and move around cryptocurrencies currently on the Ethereum blockchain, which means it covers over 9,000 different coins. We have just added Solana Access, which is another blockchain, and we've also just added the ability for you to buy and sell it natively using your debit and credit card to make it easier. Now, for a lot of people, this is going to be super useful. People are going to go, why? As far as I know, cryptocurrencies are only used by drug dealers and human traffickers because the Daily Mail told me this was so, and BlackRock did too. The thing that people need to understand is that the Western paradigm of Freud Barnet's fueled consumer capitalism is imploding. And there's
Mm-hmm.
a number of reasons for this. Yes, there's it's largely political stuff, which we're going to try and like avoid. We're going to skirt around that and just say that if we look at the world markets, we have the BRICS economy coming into play. We have a new central bank coming into play that is definitely on the opposite side of the Western Hemisphere. And it definitely means that markets and economies and cultures and groups of people are opening up and being ready to connect with other groups of people in a way that was never possible before. This does mean massive destabilization for the Western economy. It means, yes, an inevitable decline of the US dollar. And I hear loads of people going to go, oh, JB, that's nonsense. I mean, the US dollar is stronger than ever because we got sanctions. For those of us who know anything about logic, will know that if you sanction people and you force them to, you're kind of forcing them to use the other currency you're telling them not to use in a sense. So you end up strengthening the thing that you're sanctioning without getting too
Mm-hmm.
political. The US debt is being sold at a cataclysmic rate. Everybody is selling it off and nobody is buying it. So, and the petrodollar is practically non-existent. For the first time in the history of the modern form of petro economy, people are not using the dollar to buy petroleum products anymore. They're using BRICS and cryptocurrencies. Now, given this decline in the financial systems, by the way, I'm pretty certain all of your listeners will have experienced some form of financial instability thanks to a bank, thanks to one of these online banks who say you can't spend your money the way you want to because they hold it. Or my personal favorite, when you go to your bank to take money out that you've worked hard for and they go, can you wait 4 days for that, please? In this ever decreasing access to and control of your own funds, cryptocurrency all of a sudden becomes almost like the Holy Grail because it's decentralized, it is not controlled by any central bank, it is unregulated, and you can literally keep it either on an exchange, spend it, or you can keep it on a physical device. These are not unique properties. We also have the same thing with fiat. The problem is we let groups like BlackRock, Vanguard, Bank of England, Central Bank, all these different people take control of it because we were taught to believe that we couldn't control our own finances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we're too irresponsible.
Intrinsically entrusting them.
Yes. Now, in the
Yes.
Web3 world, this is, I think, the biggest thing that people can't wrap their heads around is what is the difference between these two technological shifts? Old world, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials. Web 2. What was Web 2? Web 2 was basically the paradigm where the platform is king and the platform provides you a service that you partake of for free in exchange for your data. The reality is, we did all of that, made them insanely rich, and got nothing in return. Web3 is different. In Web3, it is the combination of decentralized technologies that come together in a permissionless environment that allow people to identify and authenticate without needing a central port of authority. You are the central port of authority. Now, this sounds brilliant, but it also comes with huge responsibility because whereas before, when you used Facebook and used the Bank of England and these banks, they were responsible for your cybersecurity and safety. Well, except for when they were selling it. But that's what they're meant to be. They're responsible for it. Of course, we've seen the amount of times companies have been hacked, our data has been lost, our data has been stolen. All those people who've been in legal cases because their identities have been stolen because a company got hacked. The same thing can happen to you when you're in control. When you are in control of your crypto wallet and your own finances. And this brings me kind of to the next point, which is that our technology is hugely evolved rapidly,
Mm.
but we as individuals largely have not. Because again, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, remember the old brick phones? I used to have an early Sony Ericsson, one of
Yep.
the big original phones.
Yep.
And I
Me
remember
too.
if somebody random person phoned you up asking for your phone number, you'd be like, how the hell did you get this? And no, you're not having my phone number. And why do you know my name? Nowadays, the average person fills in their name, a home address, telephone number, and email in exchange for a free voucher.
All the time.
Yeah. And people
Yep.
wonder why they're screwed. I mean, we have to start kind of changing how we think. I know it's tricky because nobody wants to be doing this. We just want to lead normal lives. We want to We want to work 9 to 5 grind and save up for that one holiday that we get a year and that we convince ourselves that we're really happy with. You know, when the reality is if we controlled our data and monetized it ourselves, we could have any amount of holidays we wanted. We could be our best selves. That's what I do with my platforms. I haven't just built Vox Crypto and Vox Messenger. I took on Facebook and built an alternative to Facebook called Vox Alive with no ads and no algorithmic control. You know, it's just pure stream. And you can actually, it has an AI that you can monetize yourself. We've even solved one of the biggest problems in the crypto space, which is what is known as the Bitcoin scaling problem, which is if you want to have a system that allows people to control petabyte volumes of data, how do you do it rapidly and in a way that is accurate? And we have done. We've got something called nano chains, which, by the way, would be the discussion of an entire show. But what nano chains do is it allows an individual, you, your sovereign self, to become a sovereign blockchain with its own nodes and validators. This basically means we have a way in which you could pull all of your data from Vox Messenger, Vox Crypto, Vox Alive, Vox Beats, and all of our replacements of the current modern paradigm, and then you can do toggle switches and allow advertisers to have access to it and receive the money yourself or send it off for
or not.
LLM trainers.
So, so basically, all of this new technology, whether it's your own or not, I guess we're getting to the point where we completely can regulate our own and effectively become our own bank if we
Yeah.
wished.
And this is the
Yeah.
most terrifying thing for them. There's a reason why the slogan for Vox Crypto is I am the bank, because I am all about your sovereign self. You know, this
Mm.
is it probably comes back from my younger days of being in Birmingham in the 1980s, going to protest marches for freeing the Birmingham Six and reading Oppenheimer's Guerrilla Warfare. But I am very much about individual autonomy. No, I'm not a libertarian. I do get invited to libertarian shows because for some reason they dig me. No, because I got to be honest, I find a lot of libertarianism very close to abject selfishness because I'm a firm believer that if I do well, it is my responsibility to help others to do well, not just kind of like, oh, I'm doing really well. Cool. Let's keep it to myself and keep everybody else on the outside. You know, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we are living in a world of abundance and new age technology and wonder. There is no reason why we shouldn't be living far better, easier lives. There really isn't. We just all got to kind of make the choice to join in and go to these platforms. Mine is not the only platform like that, by the way, in the world that is decentralized. There are others. You don't just have to use Vox stuff. Although I prefer it if you did, you know, please.
TM.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, we are pretty much out of time, I'm afraid to say. But just before we sign off, have you got any last nuggets of advice for people? You got any last sort of things that you'd like to say that would help people understand the journey of where we are today and helping understand the future, which is in a definitely post-quantum world?
Okay, I would probably say in the post-truth reality that we are living in right here and now, do not trust everything that you see before your eyes. The reality is that already 40% of videos on YouTube are all AI. The ability to differentiate
40%.
between real and false is becoming increasingly harder. So I know it's going to sound nuts, but my recommendation is the following: read some damn books, people. Seriously, go out and read a book. Engage critical thinking. Touch grass. Get the hell away from your computer because that thing is going to F you up. And start talking to some real human beings, because the more we talk to other real human beings, the harder it becomes for an AI to trick us into believing it's a human. Bear in mind, most of the world is still recovering from COVID, so the ability for AIs to trick people is really good right now. But if we get out there and reconnect with the rest of humanity, A, we're not going to accept certain things, and B, we're actually going to feel a little bit better. You know, connect with other humans, not a computer, people, which is nuts coming from a tech CEO, I know, and my shareholders will probably kill me for saying. But
Uh,
sorry, just get out there, people.
I definitely agree, and I mean, I think if you go back to when we were in the midst of COVID, you
Mhm.
know, a lot of people were saying like you need to talk to people, and it was difficult because we couldn't go outside and we couldn't talk to people face to face, but there were all these apps that sprung up out of nowhere and Zooms and all the rest, so that people could talk to other human beings, and I think one of the things that we did realize, and we might have quickly forgotten, was the value of talking to real human beings. And we certainly, if you didn't talk to other human beings, then you became very sad very quickly. And so I think it's a great point that you raised. They're really, really important for your mental well-being. And of course, yes, it does help. There's a lot of people being subject to scams across the world, but I'm hearing about it almost every week now, where people are being subject to scams. Obviously, working in the cybersecurity industry, it's becoming prolific. And so, just having those extra, 5 seconds of thought of, really, what's going on here? Is this really true, or is this generated somewhere, or
I'll give
another
you one
human scammer?
example. I'll give you one example. Say if somebody was watching a video of you. Now, one of the key things is most people don't do is when they're watching a video of somebody, they'll always focus their attention on the center of their face or the center T zone. But then they
Yeah.
forget to look in the background. Now, if you look at the background of most videos on YouTube, you're starting to see it. The decreasing level of detail on objects in the background space. So, for example, in your background, we can make out the DVD or whatever, the covers of different things with written text on it. Yes.
Yeah. It's
Now,
an Atari 2600 game.
oh, Jesus Christ, I remember that game. Oh my God, I'm so old. Um,
Commando.
Oh my god, yes! Gee, oh my god, no way. Oh, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to do another talk about that. But the point is that in AI videos at the moment, that detail is so nuanced, it does not come out. So again,
Mm.
even though the facial data is getting amazing, the lip sync is getting amazing, the movement's getting amazing, there are still ways of looking. But all of these ways of looking at something all require something that most people have lost, which is a critical eye, the ability to look at a scene or look at an environment or what is contextually in front of you and ask the question, is this real?
So JB, awesome to catch up with you. Really, really cool. If people would like to know more about you, more about your company, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can get me on LinkedIn. I'm very active, so just type in JB Benjamin into LinkedIn. You can also get me on Twitter or X to the or whatever Elon Musk is calling it these days. Yeah, that makes for some interesting reading. JBWB 2020. But again, generally, my name is so unique. If you just type in JB Benjamin to Google, I am the only one. You can't miss me. You can even you can see all the protests I've been on and stuff as well. So yeah, it's good fun.
Good stuff. And what's your company's website as well? Do you
Yes.
have a
So
company
well,
website?
again, you got to pick which one. If you want to get to my main company that owns everything, that's Akuma Engineering, which is Akuma AKUMA .group. The individual companies you can search for are Cryotech and Djinn Technologies. Again, such unique names, you can't miss them in a Google search.
Awesome. Awesome. Look, again, thank you very much, JB. It's been wonderful to have you on. And yeah, take care, and we'll hopefully hear from you again soon.
Oh hell yeah, it's been great being here. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.